Hey everybody, welcome to Piano Professor Reacts. In today's episode, I talked to Dr. Ryan Kelly about an incredible performance by Martha Argerich. We discuss her technique from her hands to her wrists to her shoulders to her posture. We also discuss longevity on the piano. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Here's my conversation with Dr. Kelly.
What is up, Jacob? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm ready for episode 2 of Piano Professor Reacts. I learned so much from the first one. To go along with our new course, Piano for Seniors, I thought it would be really cool to look at a pianist that has, let's just say, aged extremely gracefully. So we're going to take a look at Martha Argerich. This is one of the most recent recordings I could find. And so I believe at the recording of this, she was 82 years old, which is amazing. I hope to make it to be 82 years old just in general. But to still be able to play piano, and especially at such a high level, is just madness to me. So I wanted to show you her playing, and you can sort of use your eye to spot things that like I'm not picking up on and maybe the students aren't picking up on, and maybe just give us some tips and tricks on how to approach the piano with longevity in mind.
Sure, so, yeah. I mean, we created that course, Piano for Seniors, in our membership for Piano by Pictures, obviously because a lot of people have this conception that they can't learn piano when they're old for the first, and also can't play. But piano is actually one of those things that you can enjoy till you die. And let's listen.
All right, so here's Miss Martha Argerich.
Yeah, that crossover hand stuff is such a nightmare. So Jacob, you mentioned how flat her fingers are sometimes. I bet that's interesting, right? Because that's very unlike you do.
Goes against what I've been told, and yet it's working.
One thing I think is important to notice is look at her. She has very little tension. Like everything's loose from her shoulder. Man. Amazing that a master can do. Like, she's bringing out all kinds of colors from this piano. Do you notice when she's moving? Can you pause it for a second? So you notice one thing that I think is really interesting about watching her is when she moves from one spot of the piano to another. So if you think about the way we teach scales, the crossing over and this kind of wrist motion, she's not doing any of that, and it's actually wrong to do it. So when you go from if you're doing a C major scale, you go down. You actually just want to shift. You don't want to cross over. You want to shift really quickly. Kids can't do that. when you teach them the first time. And so it's why we like do that crossover stuff. But the problem is a lot of times people carry that habit with them from their childhood, like piano lessons. If you watch like her or like Art Tatum, there's a couple videos of him playing. He's just insane. Like, but his wrist is pretty much like always parallel to the piano, and he just moves quickly. There's no like twisting.
I definitely do a little bit of twisting still.
Yeah,
on my thumb
most
crossovers.
people do. Most people do. Yeah, no, it's, the thumb leads the way. So like when you shift too, the best way to think about it is shifting where does your thumb need to go? Where does your thumb need to go? Where does your thumb need to go? All the way to the piano, keeping it parallel. Because when you do that, first of all, when you cross over, you leave the thumb behind, and then it has to travel back to where. So it's fine if you're a kid and you're playing a C major scale at like a, but when you play something super advanced like that, you can't play it this well and have that crossover, cross under type thing. You have to learn how to shift and move. And the other thing I was saying in the beginning is her shoulder is just like super loose. Like there's no like tension up there. Like she gets her big sound by like dropping the weight of her arm into the keys. A lot of people carry tension and like press and have all this going on up here. And a lot of time as like a piano teacher, when I get a new student, it's like just unlearning and loosening all these muscles up here. Like, can you drop into the keyboard with a loose sound? So those two things I noticed like right away that she's doing, that's both allowing her to like play quickly and also allowing her to like play freely, right? Play like with a beautiful expression and not a lot of tension in her body. And that's what's allowing her at 82 to continue to play amazingly well, is like the understanding of the how the body works and all that. Yeah, let's keep watching. Yeah, she moves, like there's no twisting of her wrist. I wonder where this is at. It looks like it's like in a retirement community, maybe.
Believe it is in Japan.
Notice she's like really turning her wrist only when she needs to do hand crossover, when the two hands are playing at the same time. One of her hands is high on the keyboard, playing up here, and one of her hands is low. Little sleep. The way she's bringing out that melody in the left hand so expressively, it's just...
Yeah, you forget about all the crazy stuff she's doing in the right hand.
Yeah, exactly. Which is by design, like that's a good pianist. You know. Bad pianists can play this song and it won't be very pleasant.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. Ravel has a lot of this. So I've learned this piece. Let's see, Gaspard and the Weed, and it has stuff like. Da, da, da. You have to do that. You have to have your wrist higher. So she does a lot of that stuff playing, and I think that's like kind of unusual when she curved. Let's address the curved fingers versus the flat fingers.
Yeah, I would love to get information about this.
Yeah, so the straight finger like approach It's definitely like one of those. I don't know if you've ever read, like, this is the example I like to use with this kind of things. Like, if you've ever read any literature by like William Faulkner or James Joyce or anybody who does like stream of consciousness, it's literature where there's no periods, there's no commas, there's no quotation marks. It's like one run-on sentence for like forever. It's not quite that bad, but like they break every convention of like the English language. But they don't do it in the same way that a first grader does. First grader, they're doing it being very aware of the rules, and a first grader is not. And so the flat fingers thing, it's a long time before you get to that level. The thumb, I think, actually, the not crossing over, that happens kind of earlier in piano education. But the flat fingers thing is to get like a different sound out of the piano, a softer sound, a softer approach, a flatter. It's pretty common, I think, in this type of music, because I would use like flat fingers when I'm going for texture, when I'm trying to create like a misty, that like misty sound, then the fingers are going to be flatter. But if I'm playing, and I bet you if we listen to Martha Argerich, if I'm playing like, so here's some Mozart. And I want like a really like clear sound, I'm going to curve my fingers. It's not that curved fingers are bad and flat fingers are good and like only, and it's like a crutch when you're young. It's curved fingers. That should be the default for most everybody for a long time. And then at a certain point, when you start playing more advanced music and you become aware of all the different kind of sounds and ways that the different textures of a song need to communicate, then flat fingers might be appropriate in there. So it's not a substitution. It's just another tool in the tool belt of an advanced pianist. But there's a reason we don't teach it to kids. Like, you should not. And it's actually very hard. Flat fingers are probably also more appropriate. So like, here's an example in Ravel, another piece by Ravel, the Undine piece, where flat fingers, my left hand. My left hand, because it's spanning a wider octave, and I'm actually doing a figure that's 2 octaves wide, it kind of has to be flat for you to reach the notes. So not only as my flat fingers allowing me to like have more control over the softness of how I'm touching the keys, it also just kind of a necessity thing too. Like if you're doing a lot of back and forth stuff over multiple octaves, like she is in that piece, your fingers have to be flat for you to do it. And a beginning pianist would probably do some crossover and stuff so that they can remain there, keep their fingers like curved. And they would like, do that figure differently and finger it differently. But a master like Martha Argerich can spread her hand out and like really, I'm sure she has a monstrous reach.
So when I'm playing piano sometimes, like especially if I'm, trying to eat my vegetables and go through like a Bach convention or something, I have like a tendency to want to almost treat my body as if it's this sort of piano playing robot. So I tend to kind of keep my torso in a fixed position and then try to just keep good posture and then move my arms around in a way that, it's reliable because I kind of sit in the same spot every time. But I noticed that she's doing a lot of rotating with her entire body. And can you kind of like speak to the advantages of that and maybe like the disadvantages of my sort of stiff playing?
Yeah, sure. To get like a good sound, a good tone from the piano, back to the Mozart example, like it's the weight from my shoulder loosely dropping into the piano. That's going to give me a lot of like physicality in piano is all about like short moments of tension followed by release and kind of that over and over. So right when I play it, maybe there's a moment of tension and then there's this release through my shoulder. So the reason for that, I think if you're like robot and you're stiff, you'll get tired. And you will, you can do it if you're, if you're playing a simple song or if you're playing for church, if you're playing here, right? Like you can be stiff and you'll be fine. But if you're playing Jeux or you're playing Undine, Ravel, or Mozart or Beethoven or anything, you will get tired, and like halfway through the piece, you'll probably crap out. It won't sound as good. And so, yeah, you want to, for a few reasons, because you'll get a better sound. So you said she's moving around a lot, and I once heard it said that like you play the piano with your body, not your fingers. Like it's a connection. It's a connection. When I play that note, it's a connection from my torso to my chest to my shoulder, and every ounce of my body is going into that. And that also creates like a flow. It creates like a flow of movement. If you watch her again, her body language, her body will follow the melody, and you'll get into, like there'll be more pressure, more from her body when she's getting like a louder sound or when she's building something, and there'll be still movement to create all those fast notes that she does with the soft sound as well. So better sound, won't get tired as much, like no fatigue, which allows you to keep going and play. Pianists practice, I don't know, some are crazy, practice 10, 12 hours a day, right? Like you can't sing 10 or 12 hours a day, but if you play piano correctly and you use your body correctly and have all these moments of relaxation in between the tenseness, you can play forever.
As kind of somewhat stiff piano player, can you maybe share like an exercise or some sort of actionable way in which, like, let's say I'm going to do this 10 minutes a day for a week. What would be something I could do to kind of start to see improvement, to just like not be so stiff and to use my body more effectively to play piano and get hurt less?
Sure. That's great. Great question. So the first thing I would do if we were in person is I would grab your wrist, and you can do this with yourself too. And I would ask you to like let go of all tension in your shoulder. It's actually pretty hard to do nothing. Like we're very like, to completely relax the muscles, like all through the arm. But I would try and get you to relax. I would hold your wrist until you do, and then I'd have you practice letting it fall into the keyboard and see what that feels like. So that's the first thing I would do, and to let you get that. The second thing I would do is just have you play like a C scale, and have you follow through and create looseness in your shoulder at each moment. I'd get you used to trying to play the entirety of a scale or anything with something simple that you don't have to think about, even if it's a 5-finger position, and let your whole body play every note that you're doing. So first the physicality of it, next we apply it to some form of playing, and then we go incrementally from there and pick a piece of music, maybe a line of music, and talk about how we should move through the music. But the first thing I would do is just try and get follow through for even if it's near my. Like I would make you exaggerate those movements so that you could get used to it and feel how that feels in your body.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. A thing I've noticed from kind of like adult students is like a common pitfall that they have is to want to take on too much and try to go and learn things fast. And so like you're saying, for me to, or just for a student to achieve any level of kind of fluidity and comfort, I mean, you have to play that C major scale way slower than you want to.
Yeah.
Because like everybody wants to play fast. So it's just like you start, you might figure out the coordination and then you immediately start cranking up that metronome. But seems like, to really sort of free yourself from a lot of this tension, it has to be taken at a very slow speed.
Yeah. That's where you start. And so you think about like the example of the C major scale again. The first thing I do is have you try each note, but you can't go like you can't do that, right? So okay. Ryan, how do we create motion? If you could also do the entire scale as one gesture, one movement, which if you look at her, she'll play like 16 notes, but it's one movement. It's one of those. So you start with doing it with a single note to just get used to that. But then, when you start playing multiple notes, that's like 8 notes, and it's and it's one movement. That's one of those movements. But I'm feeling the looseness in my arm through all those, and that knowing how to group those movements and those notes together takes a lot of experience, a lot of practice, a lot of workshopping. But that's the general principle.
Yeah, that's super helpful. You're also just a beast, man. It sounds really good.
Thanks. Thanks.
How are you feeling about her posture and her shoulders? Because she seemed maybe like a little bit more hunched over than you would expect. Like when you think about posture, it's you kind of almost imagine like sitting up straight, shoulders back. She seemed a little forward. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I will say that like part of it, I'd be curious to see how she plays like Mozart or something, because I do feel like that's a little bit more, it's a little more angular. It's a little more like angular in the music. The Ravel, like impressionistic style is a little bit more movement, a little bit more fluidity, and using also a little bit more of the keyboard.
Hmm.
So a lot of like the early classical stuff only uses like the middle part of the keyboard because they didn't have these extra notes. But when you start going more and more, like you have to lean, you have to lean more. There's a lot more movement, a lot more gestures, and I mean to be truthful, I don't know I don't know if her posture is contributing to the style, or if it's like a physical thing or a comfort thing. It's not wrong. Like I'm not going to say Martha Argerich is wrong. She can do what she wants. You've heard of Glenn Gould?
Of course.
Yeah, he played like low on on a chair that he carried around with him,
Hmm.
and he played super low on the keyboard. He was like doing this from like below,
But
and
didn't it also kind of ruin his body?
yeah, maybe. I mean, I think he died in his 50s. I can't forget how he died. He had all kinds of weird things like people shook his hand too hard. He was weird about that. He
He would like dunk his hands in like nearly boiling water too to warm up for concerts, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, he did. Yeah, he's like the perfect example of just like a crazy genius. Like
Weird dude, yeah, but he could
totally,
shred.
totally, yeah, exactly. And he's actually like a really I brought him up. You didn't bring him up, but like he's a terrible example for students. I remember when I was a freshman or sophomore in college, I got really into Glenn Gould, and I started trying to do some of the stuff you did too. And my
Yeah.
teacher's like, "Who are you listening to?" And I was like, "Glenn Gould." He's like, "Do not listen to Glenn Gould." Like, and that's kind of like one of those things where it's like you can listen to him after you know how Martha Argerich would play it, or after you know how Daniel Barenboim would play it, or after you know kind of like the standard, then you can go listen to the crazy genius that breaks all the rules. But like don't start there and think that's the norm. He did all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, I deal with pain to this day because of my Glenn Gould fandom, so I get it, man.
Yeah.
So so I've kind of noticed from having to play a lot more piano, I noticed that it's Newton, right? Like every time you hit the piano, it hits you back a little bit. Is there sort of something that we can do to kind of absorb more of the shock from playing piano, from our hands colliding with this hard, object?
Yeah. What I was just saying before does that. It kind of it bounces back some of the momentum that you put in the piano, and then also winds you up for the next motion that you have to do. Yeah, a lot of times like with students, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm making like giant circles. I'll have them just like, think like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, like giant circles all over the piano. Like it has to be a circular motion. One movement moves into the next one, moves into the next one. If it stops, that shock has to be absorbed from somewhere, and it's going to be absorbed in your body, which is not good. Yeah. So same kind of principle. It's just why like when you're like an intermediate pianist going to advanced, like you can read notes, then we focus a lot on that. Like college students, like freshmen and college students, it's like, all right, let's talk about how your wrist plays into this, how your physical gestures go into the piano. That's kind of like the level. Somebody who can read pretty good, understands music pretty well, and is starting to play some hard rep. That's where these conversations become really important. But it can be for somebody like you who's a professional, still pretty vital to learn how to create those circular motions and go in and out. One thing I worry about with our students is if they watch a conversation like this and they just go, "Oh man, that's like so complex," and then they don't like get started. You know what I mean? It's like the overwhelm of it, of like, oh, I better do it right. Am I doing it right? I don't know if I'm doing it right. Ah, screw this. I can't do piano. Right.
Yeah.
I try and
No.
remove as much of that as possible.
I think we talk about beginner students and sort of really sort of thinking about how much information to give them, right? Because
Yeah.
on some level, it's like the Carl Sagan thing. To play piano, you must first invent the universe. And so, sometimes it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
delineate where is like the cutoff point for truth. Sometimes you have to kind of simplify things and rein it in. It's kind of just like the question. It's like, do you teach children Beethoven or not? And maybe they're not ready for it, but
Yeah.
just exposure can be great. I
How do you
think
do it
it's a little
anyway?
bit like learning a foreign language, right? Like you want to definitely just focus on the basics. That's what you can control, but also like immersing yourself in that language and just letting stuff stick when it sticks, I think can be very, very helpful. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Like, and if you don't understand something too, so if you watch this video and you're just starting, you're in our piano by pictures world, and you're like, oh, I'm super overwhelmed. Just put it on a shelf. If you don't understand it, put it on a shelf. I can't tell you how many times I've been playing or practicing or even teaching, especially teaching actually, and I find my teacher's words coming out of my mouth, or I remember something he said, and I get it for the first time, and it's a decade later. That happens to me all the time, and I'm like, oh, that's what he meant by that when he said that one time. It like flashes into my brain. So even if you feel overwhelmed, or if you feel like this conversation was above the level that you're at, put it on the shelf, and it still was worth listening and learning kind of about how to move at the piano. By all means, don't be overwhelmed, and know that if you are a beginner and want to learn how to play the piano, it doesn't matter how old you are not barred from this instrument. In fact, you're welcomed, especially here at Piano by Pictures. That's mostly who we serve. And we're excited to serve them, and excited to see the joy that finally comes with that. And I think we have a link to our to a free course, free books for piano. It's called Piano for Seniors, and some books with showing the Piano by Pictures method. We'll send you a program to show you how to use it. All you got to do is cover shipping, and we'll send you the rest, and you can try out the program for yourself. And so I think with that, you have anything else to add, Jacob, or should we end there?
Yeah, I guess if this conversation was a little too much for you, go watch the You Are My Sunshine basic lesson because it's perfect for wherever you're at. I go super slow in that, and I walk you through it really nice and easy. But
Cool.
yeah, more than anything, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I always get so much out of these conversations. I know that like, as soon as I get off this, I'm gonna go play a C major scale
Yeah.
and really get flowy with it. So
Feel it from your
yeah,
shoulder, from your shoulder, not your elbow, shoulder.
shoulder.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, exactly. All right, Jacob.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks for hanging. See you later.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kelly. Bye.